Welcome all, you hardy souls. This panel will explore the challenges, the technologies used, the lessons learned, always great, and tips and guidelines, often even better, in developing innovative mobile projects that engage diverse audiences. Now, the first speaker was to have been Laura Baz, who's responsible for digital projects at the Musée de la Civilisation in Quebec City. Unfortunately, Laura had to cancel her participation. So, and she had coordinated the app project developed by the museum. So I was in touch with one of her colleagues and have received some background information about the app from the project lead, Sophie Giroux. So I'm going to share the information that I have, and I would just like to, for the record, note that any errors of interpretation or presentation are mine alone. So I just want that to be clarified. So while I speak, Pierre is using his Mirror app to actually show the app on the screen. So I'm now switching from Wendy to channeling Laura. This app was for a self-guided visit in Quebec Sign Language, LSQ, Langue Signée du Québec, Québécois, du Québec, je crois. De Québec, was developed by the Musée de la Civilisation in collaboration with the Foundation for the Deaf, with the Quebec Foundation for the Deaf. I was told that the museum is very committed to a policy and action plan for universal accessibility. So background notes and then the steps. The museum opted for a visit in Quebec Sign Language to the museum's permanent exhibition. They considered that this was, that's next door. I was thinking, this isn't sign language. I shouldn't be hearing anything. They considered it was just more effective investment of their budget for a long-term project. And the museum selected the permanent exhibition Les Temps des Québécois, the time of Quebecers, from New France to the present, providing access to historical information for Quebec's hearing-impaired citizens, which is very rare, according to Dr. Forgue of the Quebec Foundation for the Deaf. So it was quite innovative for the province. And the Musée de la Civilisation is Quebec's provincial museum, some additional background. The museum also had another tour in Quebec Sign Language in the permanent exhibition, it was in the permanent galleries, territories or territoire, but that exhibition ended in the winter of 2013. So the steps in developing this. The scenario, the museum used an existed guiding tour as its base, as its point of departure. First, the museum walked through the guided tour of the exhibition with a facilitator. And that tour was recorded during the visit, just sort of an informal, nothing final. And after that, the facilitator wrote a step-by-step description of his visit. And the historical content was then verified by the museum. Certain historical concepts, phrases, or vocabulary were reviewed and verified by the Quebec Foundation for the Deaf. And the length of the visit was set at 50 minutes, following the Foundation's recommendation of 120 words per minute in sign language. Then the translation into Quebec Sign Language. Once the scenario was established, the facilitator did a second tour, which was videotaped, accompanied by the Quebec Sign Language interpreter. From this video and scenario, the sign language interpreter then developed the sections of the tour and working very closely to verify the tour throughout, verifying it with the museum in preparation for the final video. Then the video. Subsequently, the Foundation for the Deaf and the museum worked with Scénarimage Multimedia to shoot the segments and to edit the visual content. And that was the result that you've seen here. Then throughout the museum, there are thumbnails in the exhibition to indicate where there's content in the app. The app is freely downloadable from the App Store. It's called Parcours LSQ. Any written information is in French. And in addition, the museum offers the free loan of an iPod when at the museum. I think for other visitors, it's $2, but for people who are there specifically for this app, it's without charge. The museum also worked with the desk staff at the reception. So once the app was available, all the staff at the ticket office and admission were trained by the Quebec Foundation for the Deaf on how to accommodate the hearing impaired visitors. In other words, how to use the iPod and the app, how to interact effectively with the visitors, and learning some words of welcome in sign language. So that was very inclusive and aimed at making the visitors feel welcome. And the last thing, the promotion, the app has been promoted on the website of the museum, mcq.org, and by the Quebec Foundation for the Deaf, and in the museum newsletter. So that is the presentation. Any questions? Not that I can answer, but I can always transmit them to Anna Laura. Oh, okay. Because of that rather brief presentation, which I think took 5 minutes, we have a little more time for the other two presentations, one by Pierre Bois of the Ontario Museum Association and the other by Hanna Cho of the Museum of Vancouver. I'll introduce each one just before they speak. So Pierre Bois is the Special Projects Manager at the Ontario Museum Association. And since 2008, Pierre has helped Ontario museums on numerous technology and media-related projects, providing consultations, producing resources, and delivering workshops, and training on collections digitization. I certainly have been finding every time some little question comes up, Pierre has some absolutely perfect response. Database management, digital content management, and digital storytelling. And he recently managed the development of the OMA's new public website, mobile version, and iPhone app, museumsontario.ca. So Pierre is going to present the project he led, Discover Ontario Museums, which is a cultural tourist-focused resource for desktop and mobile users to help museums further reach, engage, and attract audiences via multiple platforms. So the diverse audience looking at a way to expand the reach beyond perhaps traditional audiences, if I dare say that. The project is based on a public / mobile first approach with touch-friendly and responsive design to ensure longevity. So Pierre.
Thank you, Wendy. Okay. Good afternoon. As Wendy mentioned, my name is Pierre Bois. I am Special Projects Manager with the Ontario Museum Association. And it's my privilege to speak to you on behalf of our 400 institution members. So my session will be a bit different as I do not represent one museum. I represent numerous. But I've been speaking to a lot of you over the course of the week, many of you who work in collaboration with other museums, who may be part of a region, and you wish you had something like what I will be showing you. So, Discover Ontario Museums. What I thought I would do is actually show you the app before actually getting into my presentation. So I'll do a sandwich, show you a video, do my boring stuff, and then show you another video, and then all you'll remember is that beautiful video. So the content that I'll be showing you is completely generated by our members. There's absolutely no curation done from the association. So it really does depend how much content the members do contribute to the system. Also, it's based on location. So if they're using a mobile device, it's based on their GPS. If it is desktop, then it's based on IP. So regardless of where you're visiting in Ontario, if you sit down on an internet-enabled device, then you'll know exactly what's down the street, unless you're really far north. And then it's out of range after 500 kilometers. I just want to show a bit of the app, and the great thing about the content that's generated by our members is the breadth of the museums that are represented. So we've got, as I mentioned, 400 museums. Some have 2 volunteers running the show, and some, like our friends at the ROM, that have a massive team. So just to show you the type of content that one of our provincial agencies has contributed. Now, I can't say that this was done specifically for our website. I'll put that disclaimer now. So how many of you have heard of the ROM? By show of hands. I'm sure everyone's run into Ryan. How many of you have heard of the Waterford Heritage and Agriculture Museum? Anybody? You have? Oh, well, I've lost a bit of pizzazz then. But just to show you what we really wanted to do with this product that we've created was to give our members a platform that they can not just promote their museums, not just promote their content, but in a way compete with the big boys. And we've got the Waterford Heritage and Agricultural Museum, or as we like to call it, WHAM. So we've got the WHAMs and the ROMs. And they have all of the same features that we offer all of our museums. Depending on what they want to use, you'll see there are more features. If some museums don't have the resources, then the features disappear. So if you've ever been to Waterford, they have a very healthy agricultural community. And I do recommend their tractor pull. And so what we've done is we've really leveraged assets that they already have. So their digital content on YouTube, on video, and I won't show the whole video, it's just I'm making a point.
Tractor drive. We've had beautiful weather every year, and this year we've had the most tractors we've ever had with 64. The oldest tractor dates back to 1942. You're all good?
Okay, that was wham. So I'm going to get off of my iPhone here and actually get into my slide deck. Bon. So again, thank you for sticking around on this Saturday afternoon. I was hoping for 15 people and we're 18, so thank you. Okay, that's yours. Bon. So we had a unique challenge at the Ontario Museum Association because our audience are our members. And then through our audience, we reach their audience, which are their visitors, and then a new audience that we're really pushing to get, and those are tourists. Ontario's tourism market is booming, and there are large populations coming in, and we want them to discover our museums at all costs. So that is what really drove this project. So for us, and again, the unique challenge was to present some sort of canvas for the 700 plus museums we have in the province. Now, we've always had that running question and that running joke in Ontario that we just don't know how many museums, art galleries, historic sites, heritage organizations that we have, we've never really mapped it. So now we're really pleased to be able to represent exactly how many museums we have in our province, and we're well over 700. So we needed to plan ahead and really choose the right approach for the appropriate audiences. Ha 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 ha. Yeah, we can go for some appetizers after. But we really wanted to go mobile first and touch first. We are dealing with public funds, and we cannot misuse public dollars, so we have to make sure that the investment lasts. They say 5 years, we want it to last 10 years. So we've really left it open-ended for future development. The developers that we were working with highly recommended that we go with mobile first. So rather than developing a website and then developing the mobile, they highly recommended that we start with mobile first and then we develop the website. That reasoning came behind the statistics with the number of individuals using smartphones. And over 80% of individuals with cellular telephones are using smartphones, and more people are using mobile devices to get their information off the web. And of course, we were also looking to attract tourists to our museums, so obviously whatever fits in their pocket was the best way to go. We also wanted to offer the best and easiest way for tourists and visitors to find our museums. But we didn't want to kill our members with 3 platforms to enter content. And that was the big fear. We told our members that we were doing a mobile version, a native iPhone app, and then a website. And all of them started freaking out, saying, no way are you giving me 3 databases to enter some content. So what was developed on Drupal, and this is a highly customized Drupal backend with MySQL database, any content that's contributed by our members is then pushed to the 3 versions of the project. We also had big discussions about whether we should go native or mobile web. At the time, and I'm sure a lot of you struggle with this, you'll apply for funds. A year and a half later, you'll get the money, and the technology's completely changed from what you applied for. Well, when we applied for funding, this was back in 2009, there was no HTML5, and mobile web was, I'll design you a website that looks good on desktop, and then hopefully it'll fit on... do you remember the HTC Diamond? Not very good for, no one remembers HTC. I do. But at the time, iPhone was obviously the leader in smartphones, and now the highest number of users are using Android, so thank God we didn't invest in BlackBerry either. Oh boy, that would have been $40,000 down the drain. But Android users are obviously the leading and growing number of smartphone users, and fortunately we got our funding cut, and we could not afford native apps, so our developers said, let's do mobile apps. And thank God we did, because Android users can discover Ontario museums on their devices. We also had this big debate about always connected versus heavy downloads. So heavy downloads are great because you can use it offline, you can discover museums. However, with potentially 700 institutions uploading content, I couldn't imagine having 100 megabytes every time you load your phone, download. So we thought, you know what? The content is very low bandwidth. You choose if you want high bandwidth content, and that would be doing audio streams or streaming video from YouTube. Of course, it's public focused, as is an association that deals with professional students, all of the folks who make up a professional association. We had the challenge of stepping outside of our walls ourselves and trying to figure out what their public needed. So of course we had focus groups, and that was really useful for us. And of course it's fully bilingual, because although we're not in an official bilingual province, I am officially bilingual, and one of our funders requested it, so we made it en français as well. So obviously, we don't generate the content. We wouldn't have the capacity to generate the content, so we really needed to get our membership on board. So we had to convince them that people would go to their museums if they contributed content. We also realized that over 60% of our web traffic was coming from the United States, And that 80% of that 60% was going directly to this static guide that we had. So our guide was this really outdated list, and then you would click on it, and then you would have static information. So we really wanted to build on that so that our members could promote their content and their assets. We also wanted to create a website that was more reflective of our museum's collections. A lot of our members and our institutions just don't have the resources to create iPhone apps. They don't have resources to even maintain a website. So we really wanted to give them a platform so that they can reach our tourists. So we also wanted to give them, as I was showing with the videos, that same level playing field as the ROMs of Ontario. One of our members, very small museum, 2 volunteers, and she went a little far, but she called it the democratization of the web. And I thought, well, thank you very much. So all of our members really have that same clout. So if you're attracted to our website because you've seen the Canadian Museum of Nature or Canadian Museum of Civilisation, and then you see a picture stream from a small museum that's in Niagara Falls, then you may take a drive and go check it out. So the website really does focus on the content that our members are already creating. They're digitizing their collections because they want to make those documentary images. They have programs that they've delivered, so we want them to continue using their programming and continue using their content so that they can extend that investment because, of course, government money is scarce. If they can prove to the government in the next round of funding that we got $15,000 to digitize content, we're going to put it on the Discover Ontario Museum's website, give us more money, and usually that cycle works really well with our members. Also at the OMA, we offer training, as Wendy mentioned. So we do training in digitization, we do training in digital storytelling and podcasting. So if our members are lagging behind in creating content, we can also assist them with that. So in Ontario, we've had some fantastic new research. Who is familiar with the Ontario Tourism Marketing Partnership Cooperation? These guys are huge. They're an agency of the Government of Ontario, and they've done some huge research in visitor insights in the past year. They've looked at tourists from the States and tourists from overseas to see what exactly they're coming to Ontario for and who is likely to visit your museum. So I have a feeling like some of our museums were attracting the wrong audiences, and it may have some impact on their visitorship. So the 12 audiences that were looked at in the unique travel segments were the pampered relaxers, the sports lovers, knowledge seekers, up-and-coming explorers, connected explorers, aces, outgoing mature couples, family memory building, mellow vacationers, nature lovers, and solitaires, and finally youth socializers. Who do you think your museum attracts out of this list? You can throw it out there. No. I heard knowledge seekers? Yeah. There's 2 big ones.
Are these the explored ocean?
I'm sorry?
Is this the explored ocean outline?
Not sure. This is the 12 unique travel segments from Tourism Insights. They've created their whole own algorithm to produce this research. Any other guess as to who we should be attracting to our museums?
Should be or are? What was the question? Yeah.
No.
Did you say should be or are attracting?
I said who are most likely to go to your museum and who you should try to attract to your museum, because that's what they're looking for.
Up-and-coming explorers?
No. No. I'll show you. It is the connected explorers and the knowledge seekers. So the knowledge seekers were a gimme, but the connected explorer actually surprised me.
And are you saying those are the ones that are coming or that we should be trying to get to come?
Both. They're the ones who are looking for the museum experience.
They're already coming.
Yes, but are they going to your museum? So that's what we're trying to show, is that if you're not attracting the right type of visitor, then...
And do you have descriptions for this?
Absolutely. So I'll describe the two that are most likely to visit your museum. I do also have the list of the other 12 for after the presentation. So the Connected Explorer needs a break from the everyday and needs to be exposed to new experiences and knowledge, is committed to expanding their horizons through travel. Internet and new technologies are key instruments in their everyday life. They research, they book, share travel experiences through technologies before, during, and after their cultural experiences. And in the past 12 months, 79% of survey Connected Explorers visited a museum, so either as a trip enhancer, and 25% said their main activity during a trip was visiting a museum, so trip motivator. Those are two new words that came out of this research as well. Trip enhancing, which most museums are, so you go to a city to either go gamble or you go to a sports venue, and then you are enhancing your experience by going to a museum. And the trip motivator is, why are we going to that city? Well, we may be going because of a blockbuster exhibit. The knowledge seekers are the ones who understand places they visit. Trips are typically expanding their knowledge and stimulating their minds. They're driven to explore culture, history, architecture, natural landmarks. And again, 86% surveyed said that they seeked out museums, and 42% said their main activity was to visit a museum. And then the next two segments were pampered relaxers. 50% said they visited a museum. And then below that was 12% for mature outgoing couples. So for the next steps, we are currently working on a integrated membership learning event and data statistics tracking. I saw a tweet today about data tracking, and I thought that was quite interesting because in Ontario, we do not have live data tracking of museums, so we don't know how many people are coming through the door. We don't know who those people are. So we're looking to create a system where they can actually enter that data so that we can do performance indicators and benchmarking. So the great thing about our member portal is that they'll be using the same portal to enter that data. Some of the next steps that we're looking for our website is browsing by service. So our museums can identify if they have wedding services, if they have walking tours, all of that good stuff. We want to do points of interest as well, because a lot of our museums have assets that are outside of the museum walls. Some of them have tombstones across town that have a figure that's represented by their museum, and they may want to put a point of interest using GPS location. We're looking at planning your itinerary with multiple museums on a map, two-way social media interaction. Right now we only have a share feature where you can interact with the content shared on Facebook or Twitter, but we're looking to put in some actual two-way interaction. Museum messaging, this is an interesting one. It's clear that our website is managed by an association, but I get about 5 emails a day from public individuals asking if they can donate items, and these are very specific. And some want to collaborate with our museum, and I think they have a hard time understanding that we're an association of museums. We're also looking at doing network relations, so we're going to be we have sub-associations within our province. I'm sure a lot of you I imagine most of you are from the US in the room, some of you. So we do have a lot of sub-associations within the province, and we're looking at making their work easier. We're looking for My Calendar public profiles as well, and of course, more French content. May I have your thoughts perhaps later on what you thought of our app? And I'd also like to show you our website. Now today it's Appropriate Apps, but there's also a website that's associated to this at museumsontario.ca. And that's it. Merci.
Well, our next speaker is Hanna Cho. Hanna is the Curator of Engagement and Dialogue at the Museum of Vancouver. A social researcher with an academic background in the cultural studies of technology, Hanna joined the Museum of Vancouver in 2010 from the Asia Pacific Foundation of Canada, where she was a research fellow and lead for the Foundation's first national youth engagement strategy. Hanna is also the co-founder of the community wireless networking group, Wireless Toronto. Since 2009, the Museum of Vancouver has had a renewed and innovative vision to hold a mirror up to the city and lead provocative conversations about its past, present, and future. Museum of Vancouver curatorial lead on the project, The Visible City, Hanna will talk about how this mandate was realized in this unique and technologically innovative way with the Visible City virtual exhibit and mobile app. Hanna will discuss the curatorial and engagement approach, database integration between the virtual exhibit and mobile app, and the challenges and the rewards of using emerging technologies such as augmented reality to break down the walls of the physical museum. So, Hanna.
Thanks, Wendy. Hi, everyone. I'm Hanna. So, as my bio, which is always awkward to listen to after you copy and paste it over and over again over the years. I think it's important to contextualize, though. I'm not a normal museum person, I think. I have curator in my title, but I also have a background and strong interest in technology, in particular locative media, kind of cities and policy and social dialogue. So hence, I didn't come up with my own title, though. If I get asked that a lot, so I would have chosen something simpler. But all of that background information, I think, is useful in understanding kind of how this project came to be. For me, I think a lot of the conversations we've been having, a lot of the projects are born out of personalities and circumstance and context, and I think that context is really key. Hopefully this will be illuminating for some of you who don't work at huge institutions. I'm one of 20 full-time staff at my museum. Vancouver is a city of 650,000 people, so we're not a huge city either. So, and the museum itself has undergone a lot of transformation. So I think hopefully I'll go through some of this with you, and in many cases, it's not just about the technology, I think, but I think the social shaping and kind of curatorial shaping of the project that's of interest and hopefully useful in this presentation. So these are the kind of three chunks that I'm going to go through. I'll give a little bit of an institutional overview, talk about the mobile and web marriage here, and devote some time to, it should be magic wand wish list, but kind of the lessons learned, like if I could go back in time and do things differently, and maybe if I have the chance to do something like this again, what I would do differently. So about the museum. The Museum of Vancouver, as I said, it's it's on play here. The Museum of Vancouver, we're a small museum in the city of Vancouver, and we're nonprofit. We're not run by the city, but we have this beautiful, iconic building that we occupy. We have about 20,000 square feet of gallery space. And in 2009, so the year before I joined, it underwent a major rebranding and revisioning so that it went from being kind of an odd duck museum where you might see an exhibition about samurai swords as well as learn about the local history of Vancouver. It radically kind of, it got its act together and kind of tightened its vision so that in some, it became a museum, a living museum that didn't just focus on its past, but also became an active participant and catalyst in conversations about the city. So connecting people with ideas, people with each other, being part of the debate, transforming the museum experience. So we do a lot of public programming and collaborative explorations of the city with universities, artists, and other creative sector individuals. So, but of course, at the same time, maintaining and building an interesting collection of Vancouver-focused objects and expanding that to be multimedia-focused as well. As I mentioned, we do a lot of programming. There's not always a lot we can do in terms of having full-scale feature exhibitions about the city year after year. These are costly and prohibitive in terms of budget. So what we do is we physically have started going out and having day-long off-site programs. We're in what people consider a suburban, very pretty precinct of the city. It's an oceanfront property, but we're nowhere near downtown. So what we do is we've started bringing our programming in terms of exploring public space, public design into the city. So very literally treating the city as an artifact. So this is something we did in July 2013, where we rebuilt public space using expanded polystyrene, kind of a one-day temporary build called upcycled urbanism. So showing what you can do when you prototype and give architecture and urban planning students a little bit of bandwidth and some programming support to transform what are otherwise horrible corporate blank public spaces and transform them, even if for a day, into playful structures and animated spaces. So about the project. So all this context is partially to inform why we did the project in the way that we did. The other part of it, I guess, is we wanted to do something cool with technology. In other words, I wanted to do something cool with technology. So as mentioned, in 2006, I was one of the founding members of a local wireless networking group, and we were interested in things like hyperlocal content and creating a platform for local artists and connecting people with each other. So I've always had an interest in this. We'd been seeing other great projects come out from larger museums, things like Street Museum, History Pin, City of Memory, all these things. So we went for a funding pot from the Virtual Museum of Canada and thought, while we're at it, we're going to kind of lump all these project ideas together and see if we can get some money to come up with our own version for our city and locally kind of relevant material. But in keeping, we didn't want to just mimic these really wonderful projects. We wanted to kind of take what we found the most compelling out of these experiences. City of Memory is a web-based story map. History Pin is a locative kind of geotagged content aggregator. Street Museum is an augmented reality now and then app. And we wanted to kind of have a little bit of everything. We wanted the full meal deal. We also wanted to stay true to what we were doing well and what we were becoming known for, which is things like locative media. We were inspired by things like locative media projects, which is site-specific, kind of low-tech storytelling projects about your city. You dial a number and you hear an oral history about a project, about that spot told by a local resident. So kind of if this corner could talk and tell you a story about where you are, you know, and we really loved that kind of idea. The museum was doing a lot of off-site walking tours, and this was something that people really loved about what we did. And of course, we wanted to bring it back to our collection. So what you see here is a little snapshot of our actual neon gallery. So the thing about neon is you only can collect so many signs when you're a museum of 20,000 gallery or 20,000 square feet and display only so much. And in a city like Vancouver, where you have tons of contemporary neon signs and heritage neon signs, there's no way you want to acquire any more. So a mobile and web app were something that seemed to solve this problem. So these were some of the features that we decided to focus on and incorporate into our project. So we thought we would make it a geolocational story map and provide social history through that virtual exhibit and story map. And that would be our primary asset. Our secondary asset, we decided, would be a mobile app, and we wanted it to have augmented reality. So these are all deciding factors. There are many other features, but these are the three that I wanted to tease out. The other thing that I think is really important is that it was bilingual, and we did decide to make it multi-platform. We chose Android and iPhone. So this was a budgetary decision that would have ramifications down the road. So instead of talking a lot, I get out of breath these days, I thought I would let our short little video do some of the talking for me.
It was a light source that almost nobody had ever seen before.
Human beings have these sensorial receptors, and things like neon signs feed directly into them.
Granville Street was called the Neon Jungle.
City lighting of that sort is kind of a way of defying the darkness.
In 2011, the Museum of Vancouver unveiled a semi-permanent installation of neon signs. To extend these neon stories beyond the Museum of Vancouver's walls, we created the Visible City app for Android and iPhone. users can take guided audio walking tours and explore the app's interactive time-shifting features. The Visible City app offers a way not just to engage with the visual memory of these neon landmarks, but also delve into their sociocultural significance. The beauty of neon is its prevalence as a public art form. It's something Vancouverites and visitors to Vancouver can all see and enjoy. We hope that audiences will not only gain an appreciation for neon, but also comment on, share their impressions about, and contribute to the narrative. So that's a really quick overview of the project. There's a lot of content there, and I think what I wanted to note was, I'll get into this more, but we did end up promoting and doing a lot of outreach based on the mobile app. But Wendy, cover your ears. In many ways, the Virtual Museum of Canada exhibition funding for a virtual exhibit was really kind of the thing that we were using as a basis to develop a mobile app. We just didn't know where to get funding for it, so earmuffs. So, and I think and our funders were just so supportive. It's just there hadn't been a mobile app funded through this stream before. So I'm going to talk about the pros and cons of doing a mobile and web project, and I'm going to get ahead of myself and say maybe we wouldn't have done both at once at the same time necessarily. So the virtual exhibit is, I'd say, twice as large in terms of content, et cetera. It's a geolocationally based. You can go to a map interface and look at neighborhoods, there are mini documentaries that you can look at and listen to stories about specific signs. There's a map-based interface where you can locate different geographic neighborhoods and look for signs in that neighborhood. You can do an alphabetical search. If you can go to the website and check it out. I won't belabor the point. That was the database. It was great from a technical standpoint because from that we figured this is wonderful. We can just kind of suck all the material, a subset of that material, into our mobile, and for the mobile we emphasized the walking tours a bit more because this is how we envisioned the users interacting with it, and this was a low tech kind of non-scary way for people to say, what will I do with this app? Because what we were finding was with a lot of apps, because this wasn't an in-gallery app or collections-based app, we wanted to be very clear about the use case. So for the mobile app, a walking tour was something that was very sensible and easily understood by our audiences. And so it's organized as a walking tour, but there was very much less content. Even as it is, though, the mobile app is 148 megabytes. So we'll talk about that later. But so it was a real challenge in terms of having both assets to develop concurrently. It was both a blessing and a curse. So I think that in terms of audiences, we thought going into the mobile realm, there are only so many people that we can reach and entice to our museum location. We thought by going out into the city, this was one way of getting people where they already were, especially locals, tourists. Those were our two main markets, and we really wanted to reach out. And we don't want people to, we want revenue, obviously. We want people to come through the doors. But we also just wanted to share all this great knowledge that we had about neon and about the city, and kind of go to where people already are, recognizing that maybe this would be a way to capture a subset of that audience and entice them back to learn more about Vancouver at our museum and through our programming. The virtual exhibit was, we also tested in terms of the mobile with a target demographic because we had to pick. We didn't have enough budget for large-scale audience testing and evaluation to do many different age groups. So we focused on where our educational materials were developed, which was high school. And so we tested with high school students, and in hindsight, they have very little interest in the virtual exhibit and nominal interest in the app. In terms of the app, many of them did have cell phones, et cetera. It was a very social, exciting experience to kind of delve into some of the neighborhoods that they were already familiar with from being teenagers roaming around downtown, but they weren't interested in necessarily all the wonderful stuff. They wanted more fun stuff. And the feedback we had gotten was there wasn't enough fun stuff. You know, they wanted more social sharing, and they wanted to be able to kind of, you know, do things like take selfies and insert themselves back into the mobile app somehow. And while they appreciated the narrated walking tours, et cetera, and, you know, the youthful tone of the guide and the brevity, relative brevity of it, each walk is about 40 minutes, they wanted more fun. So that was an interesting insight in terms of our intended audience reach and then our actual feedback. So getting right into it. So kind of magic wand wish list, and is first of all, like I said, more audience research. Whoops. More audience research. Before, during, and after is probably moot, but I wish I could say we had more money to continue doing evaluation on this, but otherwise it's purely anecdotal at this point. Things like doing, having a bigger team, so would have probably, that's always something that's nice to have, but not always possible. Saying no to the full meal deal. So I gave you a little context and said all these wonderful projects that we had, and this is where a classic kind of less is more approach would have benefited the project on both the technology and content layer or aspect. Building in more social sharing. Because of the nature of the project, I think there were some constraints that we can't integrate certain things like other social platforms, so we couldn't do like a Google one login or use Facebook integration just because of our funding limitations. But you know, hopefully there were some social sharing aspects, but not to the full extent that I would have liked. Internally, from a project management support, having cross-departmental buy-in and support would have made things a lot easier. This was seen as a purely technology and engagement project. So doing things like building in collections metadata and even marketing support was a challenge because they didn't fully understand the project. They didn't know how to talk about it. They didn't know what to do with it until it was done. I think somebody else in another session said, it's hard to describe something nobody's ever seen before, and which was odd to me because I'd seen things like it, but nobody at the museum had necessarily seen something exactly like it. So, and finally, marketing. It would have been fantastic. This probably had less than 1% of its total budget allocated for marketing, which was not very much, which is, I think at my museum, typically about up to 10% of an exhibition budget is earmarked outside of operational funding for marketing for feature exhibitions, and that's something, if this kind of project ever comes up again, I would push for, and I would encourage everyone else here to advocate for in terms of having a dedicated marketing budget for anything that's mobile and outside of the traditional scope of what your museum does. And I think that's it for me. I mean, I'm really open to having questions. I feel like I'm probably missing a bunch of things. I feel like there's a lot. There are many more smart people doing interesting things. The mobile landscape has changed so rapidly, and museums are doing really wonderful things. But I thought I'd share my experience with the Visible City here. So thank you.